Welcome back. First Lady Dr. Tshepo Motsepe has said she's glad that the issue of gender-based violence in South Africa is being acknowledged. Speaking exclusively to SABC News, Motsepe said when it came to children, families needed to work together with government to ensure that they were protected. She spoke to my colleague Nzinga Qunta.
We've been focusing so much on the matric results, but the early childhood phase of any human being is where we have to put the greatest investment. That the more we invest in that area, that is where we'll get the greatest return of investment. Making sure that the people are well educated, the dropout rates, they have a better chance for employment, they become, participating and economically contributing members of society.
With that, the mandate of early childhood development was moved from the Department of Social Development to the Department of Basic Education. There's already a concern when it comes to the Department of Basic Education with statistics like the fact that 50% of children in their 5th year of schooling cannot do basic calculations, as well as the challenges around basic literacy. Is that not going to set children back even further?
The process has just started of moving early childhood development from the Department of Social Development to the Department of Basic Education. But there is an action plan where the 3 main departments, which is the Department of Basic Education, Department of Social Development, and Department of Health, are collaborating and working together with the other senior departments that are important in making sure that the children are well stimulated, like the Department of Arts and Culture, the Department of Sports and Recreation, and the Department of Home Affairs, to make sure that the children are registered. All these departments are going to work together. There is an action plan. It's not one department acting alone. With the Department of Social Development, there are the social workers, the community development workers, and people who work with orphans and vulnerable children. It is not going to be one department acting alone. Of course, education will be part of making, they're all going to work together to make sure that the action plan, it's a collaboration of all these departments, with the lead department being the Department of Basic Education.
So a concern that's also been raised around young children and access to proper early childhood development is that in urban areas there's sometimes more resources placed towards children that we've discussed. There's about 3 million children said to live in the rural areas who need ECD services, who are struggling at the moment to access them. So how can that be dealt with, and what does the foundation do, if anything, in that aspect? Like
everything else, government sets the policies, like the National Development Plan, where the aim is that by the year 2030, all children, when we say all children, that is what we aim, to make access, all the children have access. With our spatial development, where there's a lot of migrant work, where the parents leave the children in the rural areas, government alone is not able to do that. That is why it's not just the government that is participating or promoting early childhood development. It's a partnership between civil society, community development partners, and the government. It's something that everybody is aiming towards. We would really want to make sure that all children have access. The Early Care Foundation at the moment is operational in 4 provinces: Gauteng, Mpumalanga, Western Cape, and Northwest. And some of these areas are township areas, informal settlements, and also rural areas where we are expanding. We are now going to be involved in even KwaZulu-Natal and Northern Cape, making sure that all children, of course in all parts of the country, there are other organizations, not only the early childhood, early care foundation, others prioritize nutrition, others stunting. There are many forms of promoting early childhood where civil society organizations, non-governmental organizations are involved in promoting early childhood. So it's a partnership. We all have to work together, all do our part.
There's a study by the South African Early Childhood Review in 2019 saying that 65% of children in South Africa live in households that earn an income of 1,138 rand. Mm-hmm. When you're looking at figures like that, and you are hoping for the things you've spoken about earlier on, people who contribute in the future to a prosperous South Africa with a growing economy and the like with that skill set, how do you go from a child who is just surviving and try and make sure that with ECD and other implementations, we're not going to be seeing in 2030 or beyond children who are raised just to survive and perhaps who cannot go further than their current realities?
There are formal early childhood development centers which are funded by the government where there is feeding of the children, and there are also the ones like the ones we support that are in the backyards, in people's houses, in a container. The aim is to support and incubate this center or where the children are kept to a point where they receive a grant from the Department of Social Development. The children receive a grant each, about 15.10 per child, and in a month, per day per child. In a month, this really contributes to what the food or whatever other resources the children will benefit from being in whatever center the children are involved in. That is what the Department of Social Development is doing. There is support also apart from the grants or apart from whatever salaries or grants. We know that in many instances, if a grandmother receives a grant, the family shares the grant. And we also know that there's a child support grant for children under the age of 18, which is also contributing to the children's well-being. If we get it right, we hope that we will be able, within a generation, to close the cycle of poverty and improve the livelihood of our communities.
When we talk about early childhood development, we focused on the nutrition and also the stimulation. You've spoken about arts and culture being involved as well. We can't remove ECD from the context that South Africa is in. There has been another murder of a child now. Mm-hmm. We have the scourge of gender-based violence and violence against women and children. In particular, it said that 7 women are killed a day and 3 children are killed a day in South Africa. How then, in the course of this early childhood development, do you raise this issue with children? Should you raise it with children in an age-appropriate manner? Because that's the context that a lot of South African children are living in. And how do you do that so that they are empowered or protected or able to articulate and see if something is wrong?
As far as gender-based violence, at last there is an awareness, and at last there's a commitment in society to eliminate and to really, really raise awareness about gender-based violence within the community. As far as training the children and making them aware, it's not an area that I think I can contribute, because I am mostly, trained in health issues, health-related issues, or maternal child health and aging. But there are people who I'm sure are working towards having an age-appropriate curriculum or an age-appropriate manner in which they make sure that the children are aware. But of course, within families also, we've got to work out our own way of determining and making sure that our children are safe. A lot also starts within the family, apart from leaving it only to people who are trained to make our children aware.
And that was